I was at my lowest point. I had gotten really back in touch with God and religion, and I kept being given this message that I was not doing what I'd been put on earth to do. And when I started asking more questions about it, the person I was told to help was the lonely, the helpless, the hopeless, the broken, the battered, the apathetic of the world.
Welcome to All Can, No Can't, the podcast where we toss out excuses, face our fears, and reclaim control. I'm Jeff Luther, your guide to mastering the chaos and turning obstacles into opportunities. Whether you're an entrepreneur navigating the ups and the downs of building a successful business, or someone ready to rewrite the rules of your life, this is your space to grow, to push boundaries, and to embrace doing the hard shit that leads to greatness. Together, we'll explore stories of resilience, strategies for overcoming, and the mindset shifts that let you build a life on your terms. I use my experience with a life-altering diagnosis to help you find the can in every can't. So buckle up, because it's time to stop living in can't and start thriving in all can. You choose. Welcome back to All Can, No Can't. I'm your host, Jeff Luther, and kind of your guide through this podcast. The important piece of this podcast is we're finding the opportunities in the obstacles. And today's guest kind of is at the heart of that. It's someone who turned a successful career into an actual meaningful mission. John R. Miles. He's a former U.S. Navy officer. He's a former executive at a Fortune 50, and noticed a pattern everywhere he went. People were achieving, but they weren't flourishing. The fulfillment piece was missing. That insight led him to create Passion Struck. It's a movement. It's a movement with a podcast. The podcast has over 75 million downloads. That's where he translates behavioral science into practical tools for intentional living. We hear about this stuff all the time. He makes these things practical for us. He's interviewed world-class thinkers like Angela Duckworth, Seth Godin, Gary Vaynerchuk, and he's also a best-selling author of Passion Struck, winner of more than 20 international awards for that book. Now he's taking his mission to the next generation, which I love. And that's his upcoming children's book, You Matter, Luma, is teaching kids the power of belonging and kindness, like from the very beginning. And John, thank you so much for being here. I am so excited to talk to you, and thank you for the time.
Jeff, such an honor to be here and to serve your audience. So thank you so much for having me.
Awesome. Man, I'm going to start out stirring the pot. I am so interested to talk to you. Your message is big, and you have a huge audience. So we'll start out with kind of a debate topic question. If you ask 10 people, what's the greatest human need? You're going to get 10 different answers, right? Tony Robbins talks about love and connection. I think it's Maslow talks about belonging. Modern psychology points to autonomy, competence, meaning, all these things. Everybody has this framework, but like it or not, you're now a public figure, right? So you're in this mix with these folks. And you've stepped into that debate with kind of a different answer. Your thing is mattering, that we have a mattering crisis. What is mattering? Why does that rise above the rest of these for you? And how did you come to see this as the foundation rather than just kind of another piece of this chart?
So Jeff, I have to tell you, I didn't come at this to ever be the champion of the mattering revolution, which is what my life has now become all about. But I think we're best positioned to serve the person we once were. And there was a point in my life where, man, everything that I thought I wanted had come true. I had worked so hard to get there. So many countless hours, so much drive, so many mountains I had climbed. And when I reached the summit, I realized I was completely unfulfilled and emotionally numb. And as I was sitting there in my misery of why was this happening, and I was at my lowest point, I had gotten really back in touch with God and religion, and I kept being given this message that I I was not doing what I'd been put on earth to do. And when I started asking more questions about it, the person I was told to help was the lonely, the helpless, the hopeless, the broken, the battered, the apathetic of the world. And at the time, I was a direct report to the CEO of a large Fortune 500 company out of Austin, Texas, run by one of the biggest billionaires in the world. And I could not understand at all who those people were or why I was being chosen to be the one who was supposed to help them. I had no clue. And man, I struggled with it because it was a complete departure from everything I had known, and I had no idea what I was supposed to do. And so I think I did what most people do. I resisted with all my might. I loved the lifestyle I had and everything that came along with it. And why would I want to change any of that except for the emptiness that I was feeling? But I tell people that at that moment, I just completely felt never enough. But more so than that, it's shocking that as much as I had accomplished monetarily, I felt completely invisible in many ways in my own life. And as I started over time to do this exercise where I was trying to find a one word problem that all those symptoms point to, we hear we're in a loneliness epidemic, we hear we're in a hopelessness epidemic, and all these other things. People are more burned out than ever. I figured that they can't all be separate things and they had to be part of something bigger. And the word I came up with was, everyone across those groups is feeling invisible in some way. And as I started to do more and more research on this, I came across the work of Gordon Flett, who is a retired professor now from the University of York in Canada. And he had come up with something he called anti-mattering. And when I started to really look at his research and the implications of it on our life, on our fulfillment, on the length of life that we will have, it was just like a moment of reckoning where I realized that that's exactly how I felt. And I came to the conclusion that that is how so many hundreds of millions, perhaps billions of people feel across the planet right now. So if antimattering or unmattering is the issue that's plaguing everyone, then how you close that mattering gap becomes the key to getting so many people back on track with feeling fulfilled in their lives.
Yeah, yeah, all that makes sense. But I have a couple of questions just around that. You were almost like a lot of entrepreneurs suffer. You were on that hedonic treadmill, right? Once I get to this, things will be good. Once I get to this, things will be good. You got, I mean, you reported to the CEO of this major corporation and you still felt like you didn't matter.
The crazy thing about getting that senior in a company is it is you become the most expendable, and you have such a tight tether on their appetite for success versus unsuccess, and however you want to look at that. I mean, you can see the clearest example of this if you look at professional sports coaches and how quickly universities or professional teams will pull away from a coach um, if they're not living very quickly up to the expectations. And that's because when you reach these levels, your pay becomes to a point and the pressure becomes a point, and the expectations become such a point that you're either going to break through or you're going to have a short tenure. And so
Mhm.
the pressure is extremely high. In the company I was working at, the average tenure of a vice president at that time was less than 6 months for a new
Holy
incoming
moly.
for a new incoming vice president. And when I was there, we had six presidents who were my peer group, but they were all part of a program where, on a quarterly basis, one of them was kind of anointed as the champion of that quarter. And at the end of the year, what this would amount to is one of them would make like 30, 40, $50 million, and the other person on the end on the other side of the spectrum would get fired. So it just puts this enormous pressure on you
Jesus.
to perform. And that wasn't the case of just that company. I mean, you look at, my role was chief information officer, but the average CIO, if you look across all businesses, is typically like 12 to 18 months that most survive that position. So, it's a dog eat dog type of world. So yes, I had gotten to the point that I wanted, but it didn't come without its enormous pressure and expectations that come along with it. So you're trading so much of your life for the monetary rewards. And what I mean by that is, I was working 80 to 120 hours a week, traveling 2 months or 2 weeks out of the month overseas. And so it starts affecting your mental health, your physical health, your relationship health. I mean, all of it in ways I don't think you comprehend until it starts catching up with you.
Yeah, it starts out glamorous. It sounds like, oh, I'm here, I've arrived. And then you're like, oh shit, what have I arrived at?
Well, yeah, I remember people always telling me, because I've traveled to like 60 countries, man, you must have so much fun when you're in those countries, getting to explore and this and that. And I'm like, there's none of that. I mean, you land and you're jet lagged, because for me they were typically around the world type of trips, and it's just one thing to the next, constantly being emotionally um, just worn out. So I mean, it's a lifestyle that many people lead, but I had no idea when I started the journey that that's what the pinnacle was going to be like.
Yeah. Yeah, and then you search for fulfillment. I'm here? Why do I not feel fulfilled? What was do you remember the exact moment that you realized that that traditional definition of success was costing you? Like that traditional definition of success, you met it. You were the definition. That traditional definition was John R. Miles at one point. Do you remember when you realized that that was costing you the meaning of your life? I'm putting words in your mouth a little bit with the meaning of your
Well,
life.
I think what I realized, and I think this is the biggest reason why I've decided to write a children's book, is that what I was experiencing, I didn't even really realize it almost until it was too late, because we get so caught up in our own lives. And I think as we're chasing this, we're making incremental gains. So it's not as if you're riding this wave that all of a sudden peaks. It's happening over a period of time. So I don't think you even realize how much your life is starting to evaporate underneath you, because it's kind of happening at a slow pace as this is all unfolding, until you kind of hit a stock hockey stick moment where everything kind of comes into focus. And I think for me, what really caused it is I was starting to have a ton of cognitive issues and some health issues. And the biggest thing that I was worried about was my memory was having all kinds of issues, especially my short-term memory. And so I originally thought maybe I had a brain tumor or something. So I started to go in to get EEGs and other neurological tests to try to understand what was happening. And it eventually led to a neuropsych evaluation, because all of those tests showed that I was completely normal. And what she determined was that I had severe depression, and which had amounted into apathy and emotional numbness. So it had been dysthymia. that had been plaguing me under the surface for probably 8, 9, 10 years, and I had not known it was really happening. The only thing I could sense was the world was a little bit less bright. But on the other side of it, I think the wake up call for me was that mattering is something that we are passing on or not passing on to our children. And when I started to see it unfolding in my own kids, that I was passing on this performance type of attitude onto them, was my wake up call that something had to change.
Yeah, your message was kind of performance at all costs at that point in your life. Is that a true statement?
Well, I guess, coming out of the Naval Academy, we were a type A personality. We're kind of taught to take the hill. And for me, I had these things that I wanted to accomplish professionally, and those became the next things I needed to conquer. And I would go after them relentlessly, not realizing how much. I guess the best way I could say this is imagining yourself on a stool that had five supports, and all of a sudden one is filled with the constant grind while all the other ones that are supporting your life are becoming thinner and thinner and thinner underneath you. And eventually what's going to happen, that stool is going to crash. And that's
Yeah.
kind of what happened to me.
Oh, wow. Did you have like any kind of, was there a mental break or anything like that? Did you have a freak out? Did you go in and shove papers off the boss's desk or anything like that? Or was it quiet?
Well, for me, the turning point really came in 2017. I had I had left the Fortune 50 world and decided, maybe if I continue to do the same thing and I just go to a smaller private equity run company, the change of scenery and the scope of responsibilities will cause a difference. And uh, anyone, I know a lot of your listeners are small businesses and entrepreneurs. The thing I have learned now that I've kind of worked in the largest of companies, small, medium sized businesses, and startups, is all companies face 85 to 90% of the same issues. It's just a
Mhm.
matter of scale. In the Fortune 500 ones, you're dealing with a bigger ship to turn, which has its own frustrations. But in a smaller company, you have a plethora of more issues that you have to solve all at once. So I was just kind of trading one reality for the next. So I made a decision to get out of that and get more into entrepreneurship. So I started a fractional search firm called Ovesto. And while I was on that journey, um, I took my daughter, who at the time was in middle school, to I dropped her off at school one day, went to Orange Theory, which is where I would work out at the time. And that given day in November, the gym had an electrical fire. So I came home unexpectedly and walked into a burglary of my own house and came face to face with the intruder who was robbing me, pointing a gun in my face. And so I was
Wow.
able to successfully get out of that situation. And just as I was trying to mentally process the trauma, 3 or 4 days later, my best friend committed suicide. And coming out of those two situations, one, coming face to face for the first time in decades since I'd been in combat with, losing my own life, and then my friend taking his, I just finally came to this conclusion. What are you waiting for? You
Mm.
keep making these little pivots to do something different. What is stopping you from investing in yourself and start making the dreams that you've always wanted, in the way that God has asked you to come in service of these people? Why aren't you doing it? What is it costing you not to do it? How much, how many more things do you have to be told and slapped across your head before you go after it? And so that is the moment, although I realized the need for change years before that.
Yeah. What was stopping you? Like if you could go back and pinpoint it, or what do you, I mean, I know, I think you do some coaching, right? Do you do one-to-one coaching, or is yours all like a group movement?
A little bit of both. I work with
Okay.
a very. I'm kind of like the Tony Robbins model. I have other people on the team who will work with people. I work with a very select few people myself.
Okay.
But I think I heard Joe Rogan maybe say it the best. I think what stops all of us in one is fear of other people's opinions. I think
Yeah.
another one is our own limiting belief system, thinking that we can change because we're too invested in the life that we have to make the enormous switch that we see in front of us. And the only way I can describe it is it's almost like you're on one mountain in the Himalayas and you see another one 50 miles in the distance that you know you need to cross to get to, but you cannot fathom how do I get from the peak of this mountain to that one. And so what ends up, I think, stopping the vast majority of people is we look at the enormity of the chasm and it becomes almost impossible to start. So we sit there and we're just stuck in what seems to be quicksand as we keep sinking further and further into our misery. And so what I have learned and what I wrote about in Passion Struck is the first step out of this is what I call being a mission angler. And I use this term angler on purpose because I live here in Clearwater, Florida. I'm a big boater, love to fish, but most people who I know who are avid fishermen don't just wake up on the day they're going to go fishing and just get on the boat, point it out in the Gulf, put it randomly anywhere and start fishing. It's a very deliberate plan. But most of us don't live our lives like that. So the first thing we need to angle for is the why that's driving everything else underneath us. Um, and and for me, that why was that call I got from God. But what was keeping me stuck was um, post-traumatic stress from my time in the military that I hadn't dealt with. And so that was the first burden that I had to get through in order to get unstuck and to start rebuilding from the foundation back up.
Yeah, that's a tight spot to be in for sure. And I think there's a lot of folks that can identify with that. For somebody that's in that situation, somebody that feels like they're kind of like you're drifting, like you're just drifting along. What's the first intentional action they could take? Like something like truly something small in the next 24 hours. What's the first intentional action they could take? What would you recommend? Something big enough to matter.
Well, I would say the first thing for people to realize, especially the people who are listening to this podcast, is to maybe give a relevant historical example to show just how common this is. So when we think of Abraham Lincoln, most Americans would probably think of one of the best and most revered presidents of all time. But what most of us see was really the twilight of his career. Most of what he is honored for happened in the last 4 to 5 years of his life. And the vast majority of his life, he self describes himself as a piece of driftwood being aimlessly carried from one side of the stream to the other without a purpose in life. And so I think the first thing that you need to do is to start finding meaning again in your life. And if you're wondering how to do that, I turn to the work of Viktor Frankl. And in Men's Search for Meaning, he really gives three different elements. I'll give a fourth that I think he might have missed, but he says that the three primary ways to find meaning are through work, through love. And what he means by love is oftentimes we find meaning in how we feel about another person. Maybe it's you have a child who has a disability that you care for, so you find meaning in in caring for that person, or you have a partner who means the world to you, and so for you, meaning is that relationship and that person in your life. Just a couple of examples. his third grouping is in suffering. And this isn't suffering that you can get out of. This is suffering that you find yourself in, that there's really no way out of, except choosing one's attitude into how you're going to face it. So that could be a life-threatening illness. It could be you're going through a divorce and you're suffering as a result of it. It's a scenario like that. And I would offer a fourth one is in the service of others, something that the psychologist Dacher Keltner calls moral beauty, or the experience of awe that we have in life. So I think my starting point would be to focus on one of those and find a meaning system in your life that you can start directionally pointing yourself to.
Yeah, that is one of the best books I have ever read. It's a tough one. I mean, he's very descriptive in his suffering, that's for sure. So shifting gears a little bit, you touched on working in all these different levels, and these businesses all have kind of the same problems. It's just the scale of those problems are a little bit different. But if we look at leadership, and then we go back to like your core belief, leadership and mattering, you've built teams at high levels, obviously. What's a common leadership behavior, something that by accident, even leaders that have the best intention, makes people feel like they don't matter? What behavior could we avoid as leaders?
I think sometimes it comes down to our feeling of maybe ownership, that we have the ability to truly make a difference, as opposed to being directed in how we're making that difference. And I'll just give you a story. I used to work at Lowe's Home Improvement, and I came in from the outside as a vice president there to take over an operations function. And I inherited the group with the lowest employee engagement scores in the entire company,
Oh,
350,000.
fun.
350,000 employees, and I get the group with the worst. And
Yeah.
what I realized when I started talking, not just to my management team, but to the individuals, regardless of where they were in the organization, they just didn't feel valued, heard, or seen. And they didn't realize at all how their job, sitting in a data center or in the security operations center or in a call center, was impacting the viability of success for a Lowe's customer or shareholder value. And so they didn't see the purpose in it all. And where I'm going to answer your question, once I realized that, I realized that we needed to create a clear line of sight between the lowest person in the organization and them clearly understanding, regardless of what it was, how they were significantly impacting customer satisfaction and really making a difference. But where this pans out is, I was able to show them the vision. I was able to show them what we were trying to accomplish. I gave them the strategy, but then they were wanting me to tell them how to do their jobs. And I remember I was having this discussion with one of my mid-tier managers, and he was on one of these 24/7 watches that we had, and he commanded one. And I came in at like 2 o'clock in the morning, and he's like, "I understand the vision." He goes, "Now, what do you want me to do?" And I said, and I'm a big believer of a concept I call Gardner leadership. I think servant leadership has its role, and that's what I was trained on in the military. But I think it has a limitation, and that is it tends to be too directive in nature. Whereas when I think of a gardener, I think of someone who's eyes on but hands off. So I told this person, I can't be with you 24/7. There's no way I can see what you're seeing. And I need you to take your unique talents, your unique viewpoint, understanding what it is we are trying to accomplish, and for you to make your team feel valued, seen, and empowered, that you are empowering them to make decisions just as I am empowering you to make decisions, because I feel confident in you, or I wouldn't have you as a member of the bus, that you know what we're trying to accomplish, and you are going to accomplish it using your skill set in the best way that you think you can, handling the situation. I remember him telling me that, he was 20 plus years into his career, and he said, you were the first leader who ever empowered me to take control and to feel like I could make a difference in the organization, that my viewpoint as a middle manager actually mattered, and that you trusted me enough that you would allow me to work in an autonomous nature to control the outcome. And I said it's no different than a quarterback being put into a game. The coach can give them all the coaching that they want, but it comes down to their executing on it and seeing the field exactly, for it to be a success. So I think that's one of the things, long-winded answer to your question, that leaders get wrong, is they don't allow their management teams, the people underneath them, they don't put enough trust in them to fulfill the mission. And all it takes is for you to be really clear in giving them the training and kind of the vision for what you're wanting to accomplish. And if you've done that, you're just restraining them, and making them feel like they don't matter if you're not giving them the ability to fulfill that using their inherent gifts.
Tell me about the bee and the turtle effect.
And so where I got this, and I think it's helpful to understand the construct of the Passion Struck book, because that's what this is a part of. So
Yeah.
the book has three parts to it. Part one is 6 mindset shifts. Part two is 6 behavior shifts. And where I came up with these is, once I went through that situation where the intruder was pointing the gun at me, etc., I took about 2 years to do intense me work. And this really encapsulates my own journey of rediscovering myself and becoming passion struck, or finding again, how do I become fulfilled in life? How do I find significance? And I found that there was a path to doing it, that I had studied about 700 different trailblazers, some well-known, some not. And I found these common patterns that came up. And then I found that there were 12 of them that kind of kept popping to the top. And so I tested these on myself. So once you have that framework, the part three of the book is then, how do you put this into action? And that part of the book is called The Psychology of Progress, but it's all built upon two things. One is the bean turtle effect, which is powered by something I call the deliberate action process. So the bean turtle effect really came out of a discussion I was having with a former NASA astronaut, long-term mentor of mine called Wendy Lawrence. And it came from an epiphany that we were talking about, which was, I was talking to her about the difference between SpaceX and NASA and everything else. And she told me this story that when I think it was President Bush made the decision that he was shutting down the shuttle program, that a decision was made that there was going to be a program for crew, getting crew up into space, and there was a decision for getting supplies up into space. And SpaceX made the bold decision to bid on both. And they were given a significantly lower chunk of the share of money. I think Boeing, in one aspect, was given like 70% of the budget, and they were given like 25 or 30. But Musk knew if he was able to achieve it, he would leapfrog them because he would have a delivery vehicle that could do both. But he needed a way to make it happen. And so what he really perfected was this bean turtle approach. So Musk has this long-term vision of, he's trying to save humanity from itself, and he's trying to find a new home for us to live on. But he knows in order to do that, there are all kinds of things that need to be built. One of them is the ability to actually get to that new planet, which is SpaceX. But let's say we're going to Mars, you're also going to have some type of electronic source there, solar power, and you're also going to have some ability to bore into the Earth so you can live there, because we can't live on the surface. So he's developing all these companies underneath it to fulfill this mission. People don't understand what's at the root of all the companies that he's building. But what he has become very good at is he sees that long-term vision. So think of it as the tortoise, who's very slow, very methodical about their journeys that can take months and months to a year to unfold. But on the other side, he's very much like the working honeybee, where he is very concerned about the actions that are happening on a daily basis that are getting closer to achieving these goals. So the bee and turtle effect is really about how do you marry those two? How do you put the best of the worker bee and what they do in combination with the tortoise? And that's what Musk has really perfected. And I would say Jeff Bezos has perfected as well, is the bee and turtle effect.
Yeah, thank you. So obviously you've got a podcast with 75 billion downloads. You've interviewed several high achievers. If shorter answer, kind of tightening it up, what is the biggest blind spot they tend to have in their own purpose or their own performance? Can you find a correlation? Like what if there was one commonality, and there may not be, what would it be?
As far as it is a downfall,
Yeah, as far as high performers, where do we miss? Where do we get it wrong? What gets buried in the desire to perform? What gets buried in the desire to be the vice president of the Fortune 50 or the CIO?
well,
Is there a commonality?
I think the biggest thing that gets into any of our ways is our ego.
Oh,
I think that that is one of the hardest things for us to overcome and to push aside. I remember when I was at Lowe's, we had one of the best teams I have ever worked on. And between the five of us who were working for the CIO at the time, I didn't think there was anything we couldn't accomplish. Except I remember Steve walking into the room one day and like he just slammed his fist on the ground and said, there's one thing standing in the way of you all going from good to great, and that is ego. And I think there's so much truth in it. And the hardest thing about it is actually seeing it in yourself. Because I could tell you at that point in time, when I was in the room, all I could think of was my peer. I wasn't looking at myself in the mirror. But what I came to the conclusion, looking back upon it now with more maturity, is I was just as guilty as anyone else in that room of trying to let my own personal ambitions oversee the benefit of the team. And I think that's one of the biggest things that can plague any leader is that self-awareness.
yeah. Which brings me back to another question I'm curious about. You said, after you got out of your house with that burglary, you had a gun pointed at you, which is traumatic in any circumstance. You may have had the fortune of having it happen before in your military service, but that still doesn't make it easy. And you said you started working on yourself, which is kind of a scary thing to do. What would you say, or at least for me it was. Then you find out who you really are, right? And sometimes that's scary. What would you say was one of the hardest parts of that self-awareness and doing the work on yourself? Like what was something that was hard for you to take that step?
I think it's hard for a lot of us to look at our lives and to not put ourselves in the center of it.
Because we feel selfish, you mean? Or tell me more about that.
No, I think so much of us are self-directed. We are in this vessel that we're living in, and so we kind of come to this belief system that everything revolves around us. And
Okay.
I think for me, what the big awakening, at least for me, was I was not as present as I needed. Sorry, I
Oh,
was
buddy.
not present as much as I needed to be in other people's lives who mattered the most to me. And so I needed to push myself and through the realization of what was causing that and why was I choosing to prioritize things that I thought were important instead of prioritizing those who meant the most to me more.
Did you have a realization that because you thought it was important, you thought that it should be important to those people as well? Did you have that struggle?
I don't think it was as much that as it was I had these blinders on that I was so driven, regardless of what I was doing, that I didn't realize the repercussions that that drive was having on others who were in my close proximity.
Yeah. So tell me about this. Like your upcoming children's book that teaches belonging and kindness, it teaches it early. Why kids? What made you realize, and that's not like a why, like rhetorical. I get it, but what made you realize that this mission needed to reach kids and not just adults, this mission of mattering?
Well, when I look back upon my own life, and my own journey, I realized that this feeling of mattering or not mattering is something that is learned.
Mm.
And what is happening from generation to generation, if you look at how much how many more adolescents are depressed or filled with anxiety now, I'm sorry.
Hey,
Um,
everybody loves dogs. Everybody. Do not be sorry.
so I guess I realized that many of the reasons that I was feeling as much of that feeling I was never enough was passed down to me when I was an adolescent. And I look at the statistics today where over 40% of teenagers on almost a constant basis have some level of sadness or hopelessness that they're experiencing. Or a new study that just released today um, where they examined more than 17,000 fifth grade through 12th grade girls. And it revealed that 67% of the participants reported that they don't say what they're thinking or disagree with others because they want to be liked so much that they don't say something else. So we have become so conditioned to not feel acceptable as we are, that we go through life trying to prove we're something bigger than we have to. And I feel for myself that I was trying to live up to this feeling inside that I had to be something, and it's something that we keep passing down generationally, and it keeps getting worse one generation to the
Yeah.
next. So
Yeah.
if by the time you're in high school, oftentimes it's too late to intercede, or it becomes much more difficult to intercede because the damage is already occurring. So I started to backtrack and think, when does a child's value system really start developing, and when could you intercede with them at the earliest stage? And through research, I came that it's between the ages of 4 to 10 that they
Yeah.
can really start developing and learning their value system. So that's why I
So then
decided
that's,
that's why I
yeah.
that's why I decided to intervene with the series of books at that age group.
And it's got to be so, in this digital age, it's got to be so hard. To be a girl, I think would be so hard.
Well, I think
I
I
do
think
have a
it's hard
question for you,
on.
but you have to show me your dog. You have to.
I
What's your
think
dog's
it's
name?
Luma. We my wife
Oh,
and
no shit. Like the book.
yeah, she came after the book, but my wife saw her, and she had these big ears, and she was jumping around, and she goes, "We got to name her Luma after the bunny." So,
Nice.
but she is a puppy, and we have a painter here, so she loves to bark at strangers.
Yeah. Um, okay, so now I want you to get in the space of you ascending that ladder with your success. And like, comparison is the thief of joy, right? If you could go back and have that same trajectory again, is there a world where you could enjoy the ride? I mean, you were making a ton of money. You got to travel to places, and like you said earlier, you got to travel, you get to see the world. Is there a way that you could go back and enjoy that ride? Maybe figure it out where you don't work as much or give away so much of your life?
Well, if I could do it all over again, a critical thing happened in my trajectory. that I never anticipated. And when I came out of the military, I left the military because I had gotten an appointment to become a special agent in the FBI. And I literally got out of the military, let's say on a Tuesday, and I was going to report to Quantico the next Monday. On that Thursday or Friday of that week, I get a call from my detailer, and Congress, like we recently experienced, couldn't pass a budget. And so my class got recycled. I had expected that to have that naively to last a month, maybe 6 weeks. Turns out it was almost 40 months later before my class came back up. And at that point, life had carried on because it had to. And I think looking back at that point, I then shifted into business, and I had an inflection point because I worked at Arthur Andersen when the company collapsed because of Enron. And I really wanted at that point to go back to school to get a doctorate in psychology. And I really wish I would have listened to my intuition and had followed that path, because it would have led me much quicker to what I'm doing now, into writing, into speaking, into lecturing, and doing the things that I really love. But sometimes you are forced into situations because of this is the thing I wanted to tell you about with Joe Rogan. You're making money, you've achieved a certain lifestyle, you've got the cars, you've got the house, you've got this linkage to how you think about and identify yourself, and then it becomes so difficult to walk away from. And that would be the biggest thing for me, is I would have never reached that point because I would have taken a completely different trajectory.
Yeah. I think the way he phrased it was he just leans into the microphone and he says, Bills, right? Wasn't that the
Yeah.
episode? Yeah.
Yeah.
So back to the children's book. And you have a challenge around that as well, right? And the children's book, it's out now, isn't it?
No, it comes out February 24th,
Okay.
2026. So it's just around the corner. It was originally supposed to come out in December, but as all things with publishers go, sometimes these things happen on time and sometimes they don't. But
Yeah.
I'm kind of excited, given that it's a bunny who's the core focus of the story, because kind of does have an Easter message that
Yeah.
that we'll angle for. But I always find, whether it was Passion Struck or this children's book, that so many of the books that I read, you don't do anything with the information that you get. And so what I was trying to do in this story is show how this little bunny realizes that she has a voice and that her voice matters, and that she's able to use it to create kindness ripples throughout the world. So what I really wanted coming out of that was for kids to not just read the book, but to live it. And so I wanted to give them an opportunity where, for free, they could go somewhere and create a ripple of kindness. Maybe that is doing a nice thing for a neighbor or for one of their friends, or it could be baking cupcakes for a custodian at school. The whole purpose
Anything
is
kind, like a,
anything kind, but
yeah.
then track the ripple effect of it. So, so we're putting challenges in here. We're putting contests. We're allowing the kids to challenge their friends to take the ripple next step. And the whole idea is to kind of help them see that you don't have to be someone huge to make a difference in the world. You just have to influence one person, and that ripple can create huge change. And so that's what passtheripple.com is aimed to do. And then we also have a series of courses that we're developing with exercises, quizzes, other things, so that it becomes a whole classroom or after school type of program that kids could use, where as a class they can see how all these ripples travel.
Nice. All right. So we'll look for that in February. And in the interim, where can people find you?
So I would say the best two places for me are my personal website, johnrmiles.com. Or if you're interested in my writing, and I love to put out content, I have a very active Substack, which is called theignitedlife.net. And we put out 3 posts a week. But similar to the books, I want people to take action on my podcast episodes. So for every episode, we put out a workbook that's tailored to the episode, so that you can you can put into practice what you hear.
Nice. Um, anything I missed? Anything you felt like you wanted to tell us, or I needed to cover that I didn't? I'm trying to learn. I'm always learning.
No, I would say that the only the bigger framework for the children's work and the adult work I'm doing is something that I branded the Mattering Verse, which is a larger movement to help both adults and children feel that they matter. For adults, the Mattering Verse it comes about in the podcast network that we have, our speakers bureau, the work we do from Passion Struck, the books, everything else, an upcoming television channel, all built to help adults learn how to flourish in life. And for the kids, we're building a Pixar-like ecosystem that will have the children's books, courses in the future, short films, cartoons, everything to give an ecosystem, all built on helping to form values in children, and later we'll make it to older kids as well, teenagers and middle schoolers, through other more books tailored to that generation as well.
Nice. All right. John, thank you so much for this conversation. I appreciate it. Thanks for carving out the time.
Luma and I say thank you. So sorry
Yeah,
for
even with the nuisance of painters there. And to everyone listening, here's your reminder. John said it just as clear as could be. You don't have to be someone big to make a difference. Doing something kind has that ripple effect. So take that, just a small step today. This is All Can, No Can't. I'm your host, Jeff Luther. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure and tap follow so you don't miss the next one. And until next time, I can't wait to see you. John, thank you.
Thank you so much for having me, Jeff.
Thanks for listening to All Can, No Can't. If today's episode resonated with you, remember, it's not about the chaos you face. It's about how you choose to take back control. It's about finding that one small can in the can't you're given and grinding it down. Find your angle, carve your place out in the world, and get the fucking win. Do that by finding what you can do and not listening to what you can't. You choose. Be sure to subscribe, share, and leave a review. Your support helps me reach more people that are ready to embrace the all-can mindset. And it lets them know there's someone that's willing to walk with them no matter how dark the path gets. You can find me on Insta at JDLuther 2.0 and allcan_no-can't. This is where I share more tips, stories, inspiration to help fuel your journey. And until next time, keep pushing boundaries, breaking limits, proving to yourself that anything is possible, even when you're told it isn't. Remember, life's not about can't. It's all can. Go prove them wrong.